A sailboat has three positions. We look back, we look backwards, and that's the wake, behind us, where we've been. So you need to know where we've been, but you can't drive the car by staring, at your rear view mirror, because that won't work. So the past is the truth of who God is and how he has made us. The water that we're sitting in right now, that is the idea of faith. Faith says, I'm here in the present and I'm making daily, minute by minute decisions, minute by minute choices, minute by minute conversations and interactions. Hope is the future. Hope is looking forward. I'm never sitting in hope. Hope is where I'm looking towards and how that changes my perspective.
That is Chet Gladkowski, author of Hope is the Key, Living Through God's Superpower. Chet is a storyteller extraordinaire. He is full of wisdom and a hope dealer. Listen in for the rest of our interview. What if the only thing standing in the way of changing your life was having the confidence you need? I've found there's 3 areas you need to be confident in order to succeed: your mind, your faith, and your leadership. One or all 3 of these areas will always be in play. You are listening to Call to Confidence. I'm your host, Sharon Hughes, and confidence looks good on you.
Dale Carnegie of Orange County is proud to sponsor the Call to Confidence podcast. Dale Carnegie is a world-class training organization focused on leadership, communication, presentations, and sales. We help people take command of their lives through taking command of their work.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show to talk about hope and to talk about your book, Hope is the Key, Living Through God's Superpower. So let's just jump right in and tell me what prompted you to write the book.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here with you and your audience. Every one of us, if you have a pulse, you have a hope legacy. We are hope-based creatures. It's the way God made us. All of us have hope, and we need to have that hope tank continually refilled. And there is an instance in my history. I was a young teenager laying on the floor of our house in Baltimore one Saturday afternoon, watching the Baltimore Orioles battle against the hated New York Yankees. Did I say hated? Hated New York Yankees. And my dad was sitting there in his reclining chair, drinking his favorite cold beverage. And the Orioles started off and they were behind. They got behind. And of course, we're all desperate. So, but then the Orioles started to come back. There was a rally, there was a run, there was another run. And I just started jumping up and down, screaming and yelling, because as we all know, yelling at the TV really does change the outcome of the game. I knew I was impacting it. And the Orioles kept coming back, and the fans are going crazy. I'm going crazy. And the manager of the Yankees called timeout to stop the game and to talk with their pitcher. And as that happened, there was a break in the action. And I turned towards my dad, and there he was, just sitting there, just without any emotion, drinking his beverage. And I said, Dad, what's wrong? We love the Orioles. We fight, we scream and yell for the Orioles, and you're not doing anything. What's wrong? And he turned his head towards me, took a long drink of his beverage, and said the words that sort of changed the trajectory of my life, Sharon. He said, I don't want to hope because I'll only be disappointed. Let me repeat that for you because maybe someone has said that to you or a listener. I refuse to hope because I don't want to be disappointed. And when I heard that from my dad, those words went in my, not just in my ear and in my head, but to my heart. And
Mm.
that really changed my perspective. I knew I wanted hope, but if my dad didn't have it, why should I bother? And it was from that beginning, that draining of my hope tank, that I began a journey looking for hope. And that was sort of the start of mine. And I don't know where you are or where your audience is, but maybe you can identify with that and say, yeah, I have that kind of hopeless beginning, but how do I go forward? And that's what really has motivated me towards helping people refill their hope tank.
Wow. So that's really profound to think that that one that one ball game, that one moment with your dad, that one comment about hope and disappointment impacted you like that. And words are so powerful.
Yes, whoever said sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me is a liar, is a big, big liar. Words
I agree.
cut and leave. The problem with words and their scars is we don't see them. I had a blood clot in my spine and I have a 7.5 inch scar back there. I feel it. It's there. I can see it. But the scars of words, the scars of hopelessness, the scars of disappointment are invisible. And when the pain from those scars comes out, it's very, very apparent. I have a dear friend in our community here in Central Florida, and I met her in the parking lot of the grocery store. And so I said, "Hey, how are you?" And the words, the anger, the bitterness that came out of her voice, the the swearing that just came out, and it wasn't whispered. She was yelling and screaming.
Mm,
And I love her and I love her husband, but the words that went into my head were, who hurt you?
mhm.
Where is that brokenness, that pain that is
Yeah,
causing your hopelessness?
yeah, yeah. What a lens to look through. I mean, I tend to do the same thing when I see people react harshly, where their reaction just doesn't align with the situation. And I go, wow, what happened to you? The world would be such a kinder place if we could take that posture to look at people and say, what happened? Like, instead of lashing back out. And that's really
Well,
what the world tells us to do is, repay an angry word with an angry word. But that's really not the way to win hearts and minds over and to love people.
well, think what the world is telling us. The world is telling us one of three things. First of all, you're an accident. Okay. This whole thing was an accident,
Hmm.
out of nothing, protons, neutrons, and electrons, plus time, plus chance, plus nothing, created this incredibly complex universe. And oh, by the way, you are worthless. So there is no reason to try to reason with you. The only thing that's left, I love what this one author said, is the only thing that's left is to yell at one another. And we certainly see that all around us today. The second view is to say, in order to get better, you have to fix yourself. You have to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps and look at all the religions, all the philosophies, all the checklists, the self help universe. It's all about me fixing me. And that is a prescription for hopelessness because we will all fail. I
Hmm.
apologize, but we will all fail. The only third option is that God saw us as broken, that we broke ourselves, that He made a beautiful, fully formed universe, put us in it, treated us with love and respect and kindness, and gave us each other. And what did we do? We saw all that great gift and we turned away from Him. And He saw that we couldn't repair ourselves, we couldn't repair our relationship with Him. Therefore, he had to fix it. He had to do it. And in Jesus Christ, he paid for our sins, not us paying for them. He paid for them to bring us back to him and then to bring us back and repair our relationships within ourselves and with the people around us.
What's really interesting about that is I see a lot of people that have accepted that truth, the truth of what Jesus did for us, but they still struggle with trying to earn it and trying to fix things on their own. It's an incredible lie that we still have to earn love, whether it's love from our partner, in our families, our friends, or whether it's earning love from God. And it's interesting is I've been in a lot of churches through my years, and I sit back and I look at the message that I learned growing up that really filled me with fear. It was, you'll remember this one, Chet, get right or get left.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about fixing yourself and being good. In fact, this was back in probably the late 70s. I had an older brother, and the 70s, it was hippies. It was the thing. It's what the kids were doing. And I'll never forget this story he told me. I wasn't there. He was quite a bit older than me, but he had went to a church and was asked to leave because he didn't have Sunday clothes. And I thought, how many people have had their hearts broken? They're seeking to fit in, they're seeking to be loved. They want to know God, this creator of the universe that loves them, and they're turned away because of people and religion.
Well, that's a
Really
great, I think it was Pippert is her last name. I'm trying to find it. She wrote Out of the Salt Shaker and Into the World.
Mm,
Becky Pippert, and she tells a story about a church experience that she had. That there was this, a big traditional church, and into this church walks someone just like your brother, and
mhm.
he walks down the center aisle, looking around, can't find a seat, walks to the front, still can't find a seat. So he sits down on the floor in the middle, in the front. And of course, there is murmuring going on.
Yep.
And from the back comes one of the ushers, but not just an usher, an older gentleman who sort of shuffles down. And everybody's thinking to themselves, well, you know what? He's older. It's okay. He's going to tell him off. He's going to escort him off. Eventually, the older gentleman usher comes to the front and sits down next to him.
Mm,
And the pastor gets up to give the message and says, you will quickly forget everything I'm going to say, but you will never forget what you have just seen.
mm.
And that's the love of Christ that says, I am going to be with you. I'm going to sit with you. I may not look like you. I may not sound like you. We may have, can I can I say something radical? Do
Yes,
you mind
please
if I
do.
say something? You can always edit this out if you
Oh
want.
no, Chet, we're gonna leave it all in. Give it all you've got.
Even people who have different political values and opinions than us. I want to tell you a secret. That is someone who was made in the image of God. That is
Mm,
someone for whom Christ died. If
yeah.
that's not a reason to love on someone, I don't have to agree with them, but I need to treat them with respect and honor. I need to give them the gift of listening. My job is not to convince them. My job is to love them. Because what did Jesus say about you and me? How is the world to know that we're his disciples? Not that we have a certain political view or a certain economic opinion, or we live a certain place or we do certain things. It's because of our love for one another.
Mhm.
And that is a message that's so powerful that the world is aching. They're out there saying, please, somebody love me. And we
Yeah.
have this great opportunity.
Yeah. Isn't that profound? Well, you said something just now that really kind of struck me. I've never heard anybody say this before. So we'll call this a Chetism.
I have a list of them.
You said the gift of listening. That is extraordinarily beautiful and profound.
Well, it's it's innate part of the nature of God. Think
Mm,
back to Genesis 3. Adam and Eve have just pulled the biggest bonehead move of all history. Okay? They have turned away from a loving God and everything and listened to the lie of the enemy. They ate the fruit and they're so embarrassed that they see that they're naked. So they make some clothes and they go and hide, right? What does God do? Does God come out with thunderbolts and lightning? Does he strike them down? What does he do? He asks a question.
mhm,
And when you ask a question, the second part of asking a question is to do what? Listen. God's a listener. God's the God of listening.
mm.
When we're told to come to him in prayer and Jesus gives us a model, it assumes God's listening. So the gift of listening is to say to someone, you're valuable to me. You have worth, and I'm willing to expend my time and energy and attention, and I'm going to give you everything. If you want to, here's an example. You want to do something to show somebody that they are valuable. When you're with someone and your phone rings, just put it aside because and everybody will go bananas. They will just go totally crazy, Sharon. They'll say, "Don't you want to pick that up?" And you just smile and you lean in and you look them in the eye and say, what could be more important than being here with you right now?
Oh my goodness.
What does that tell them? It tells them they're valuable to you, that you're willing to listen, and you are extending hope to them. You're saying, because of who you are, because I look at you as made in the image of God and someone for whom Christ died, you're a person that we can be hopeful for.
Mhm.
Now, not everybody will respond the way we want. Not everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to turn my life around right now. No, there are people you're going to have to invest long periods of time with. And I know you're going to get frustrated. And I know you're going to just come to the end of your rope. But peace, the word peace in the Bible, the word peace is a word picture. It's not a peace treaty. It's not something written down. Think of peace like this, that there's a rope and a rope has two ends and on each end, there's a connecting. It's bringing a relationship. When peace is broken, the rope gets frayed. All those little strands, one gets pulled, another gets cut, or it gets tension, starts to rip it apart. Peace is the process of beginning to reconnect and reweave all of those threads together. And that's where when we have the peace of Christ, he has rewoven that rope between us and God together. And that gives us hope for there's an old hymn, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. And that
Yeah,
gives us his strength to live and be with those people.
I love that. And some of the things that I'm hearing from you, they're really leadership principles. So on my show, we talk about three things. It's mindset, leadership, and faith. And you're really hitting on all three of these. You know, clearly you've shared your faith component, but the mindset piece that you shared about when you were watching the ball game with your father and how that impacted you. But then you're talking about leadership, and that was the gift of listening, because what we all see in the marketplace is a lot of leaders that don't listen to their teams. A lot of
That
leaders that isolate in their office.
that is so true. And uh, if you look, a couple of thoughts. First of all, if you look at the march of technology, and I'm going to use a really 21st century cutting edge piece of technology as an example. Your
Okay.
washing machine, okay? Your washing machine. It isolates you. It used to be we would all go down to the stream or the river and we would congregate there. We would wash together. There was community. But when we brought it into the home, we cut it off. We become isolated. We don't have to go sit on the front porch anymore or go down to the local tavern or watering hole to have community. We have a technology where I'm isolated. So technology isolates, and also success isolates. I was a
Mm,
chief information officer of a fairly large insurance operation, and I had a beautiful office, let me tell you, Sharon. I had crystal chandelier, I had hand painted wallpaper, I had antique uh, Indian rugs on the floor and
wow.
hardwood floors under that, and a beautiful office, but I was isolated.
Mm,
It took me away from people. So
mhm.
using this as for leadership, I'm going to use a sailboat as an illustration for leadership.
Okay,
A
sounds
sail,
good.
okay.
Yeah,
As you can tell, I think in pictures. That's all I
you
can do.
do, and I love it.
A sailboat has three positions. We look backwards, and that's the wake, behind us, where we've been. So you need to know where we've been, but you can't drive the car by staring, at your rear view mirror, because that won't work. So the past is the truth of who God is and how He has made us. The water that we're sitting in right now, that is the idea of faith. Faith says, I'm here in the present and I'm making daily, minute by minute decisions, minute by minute choices, minute by minute conversations and interactions. Hope is the future. Hope is looking forward. I'm never sitting in hope. Hope is where I'm looking towards and how that changes my perspective. So when you think about leadership, hope is a huge component of it.
That is beautiful. I love this conversation about hope. And, you are just such an interesting and fun guest to have on the show, because you you're very diverse, and you've done a lot of things in your life. And, I feel like there's just this generation of stories and wisdom that needs to be unlocked and shared. And so I definitely want to have you back on the show again. But let's talk more about your book.
Well, you are so good, Sharon. I want to applaud you because what you just said is the front of the book. The front of the book are all these stories about hope. They're I can't think in long term. So, every one of them is a 3 or 4 minute read. And
Mm.
everybody, and I know everybody loves barbecue ribs, you know. So these stories are all wrapped around barbecue ribs and how barbecue ribs point us towards hope. And so, that's stories, these emblems that we can bite on and chew on. And then the second part of the book is a very practical steps of how to do the two most important parts of hope. The first
Okay.
part is how to receive hope. There are 7 steps on how to bring hope into your life. They're very direct, they're very short. There's a quote, there's a Bible verse, there's things to do because hope is practical. Hope isn't out there somewhere. To receive and build up hope, I can look, I have an electric car. I've got a Tesla. I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but eventually the batteries go down. Eventually your car runs out of gas or diesel. You got to fill it up, and you've got to be intentional about it. To refill ourselves up with hope, we must be intentional. And there are 7 steps there to guide you through that. But if all we do is fill up, you're never going to get there. The other side of the hope coin is that you must share hope. You must distribute hope. And there are 10 steps about how to share hope with the people around you. And you say, well, isn't it more about me? No, it's really more about others. Yeah, 7 steps to fill my hope tank, but 10 different ways to give hope to people, everyday people that you meet.
Chet, you are just truly a treasure. And I just know that you and I are going to be lifelong friends. I would like to ask you something personal, if I may, and we can just edit this out if you're not comfortable. But because you are, and I'll just call you a hope dealer. You're a hope dealer, and you are a wise man. Have you ever had your heart broken and you just thought there is no hope?
Of the answer is I have experienced, and again, if you want to edit this out, I trust you. We all go through what I call there are 2 big F words. One of them is free, and the other one is failure. I have so many failures in my life. It's not funny, but it's through the failures, it's through the pain, it's through the scars that if I have anything to share, if there's any value to anything I've said or written, it comes out of people who have invested in me and have helped me walk through the path of failure. No one think about, I was just think about we're getting ready to rehab, right now there's no meaning and purpose in life, Sharon. And you know why? Because football's not around. But when football comes out, we're going to have meaning and purpose again. But
That
when football comes, everybody runs onto the field. There are people who are going to miss tackles. There are people who are going to drop balls. There are people who are going to throw interceptions. That's the nature of life. And this is why I love quarterbacks. Quarterbacks, they are the center of attention. Everything they do gets nitpicked, repeated. That's why I love to iron while watching football. Yes, I do iron my clothes. I iron the clothes in our family. I love to do it. But if I miss something, they're going to replay it a dozen times. So I get to see the failure over and over and over again. What does the quarterback do? Goes off the field, sits down with a trusted advisor. They talk about it. They look at it. Nobody's screaming and yelling at one another, hopefully. And what do they then do? They get back on the field. They don't say, I threw an interception, I'm done. How many of us have had a bad meal at a restaurant? Everyone. Did we then stop going out to eat? No, we learned from it and we moved on. And that's where the hope says, yeah, there's going to be failure. Yeah, there's going to be pain. Yeah, there's going to be scars. I'm not trying to minimize it at all, Sharon. But we learn through those things. That is the path. That is the nature of life. And if you happen to think that life owes me something, that everything must go according to my plan, you're just teeing the ball up for a great big slice into the woods of life. And you're going to be hacking your way out of that one.
What made you write the book? Was there one specific thing that made you just roll out of bed and go, I have to put pen to paper?
Yes. What made me do it was we live here in Florida. And at the time, Our parents, who were all four of them alive in their mid to late 90s, were in Baltimore. The pandemic hit, so we then started making all these trips to Baltimore to help our parents. They couldn't get out to get toilet paper, they couldn't get out to get food, they couldn't get the prescriptions. So we went up there to help. And we lived in Shangri-La. We lived in the basement of my mother-in-law's house. Now, I don't know about basements where you live, but we're basements in Baltimore. There are no windows. Okay, so we're living in this cave. So it's dark. I wake up in the dark. It's just where we were. And I was talking to people from my small groups, and we just all saw this hopelessness that came on us like a tsunami. And I started writing, I started blogging. And it was from those tentative first attempts that the idea of being an encourager, someone who wants to offer hope, to share the stories of failure in my life so that others could learn from it.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, when you said waking up in the dark, I had that picture of not just a moment in time, not just a season, but how some people are literally waking up in the dark daily and they don't know how to break out of that.
Yes, I want to tell you, I love stories. My whole life is a story. I was working on a project once back in the very early, did I say early days of computers. And I know you don't remember this, and none of your listeners will, you'll have to Google this. There were punch cards, and that's how we did it. And I was working on a project I worked in Baltimore for a large insurance company, but we didn't have the computing power to run the programs that I was working on. So I had to take a train, and it was great. Somebody made a reservation. I was just wet behind the ear. I might have still been a teenager, like 19 when I was doing this. I drove to the train station in the dark, got into a train that then went through tunnels, which are in the dark. I arrived in Washington's train station, went down into another tunnel to get on the subway in the dark, came up, it was still dark outside, went into a building, took the elevator down into a basement, which is in the dark because that's where they put the computers. And I spent the whole day underground in the
Mm,
dark, running these
mhm.
programs, writing code, all this stuff. And in the evening, I reversed everything because it was in the winter, so I did it all in the reverse in the dark.
Wow.
So you have to realize no one can force you to take that step. I can encourage you. You can have other people encourage you. You can even have somebody beat you upside the head with a hot frying pan. But until you make a choice that says, I need to change. And part of that change is to get into the light. And that light partially is understanding who God is and how he made me. Part of it is relationships. Part of it could be going to the doctor because you need some help with a prescription. It can be getting into a small group to help you to be transparent in. So those are some of the things you've nobody can do it for you. It's like a relationship with God. People can point the way, but
Yeah.
the gift is there. I remember the day I knelt down in the boiler room of a church where somebody said, God loves you. I was like, nah, I don't think so. But anyway, we'll move on. They then said, you're a sinner. Hey, I got that. I understand that. And they said, Jesus died for you. Okay, that's fine. That's nice. And then he said, what you have to do is receive it, and then your sins will be forgiven. And I leaned into them, Sharon, and I said, you have got to be kidding me. What is it I need to do to earn it. And they said, that's the whole point. God has done it. You receive it. And we got down on our knees and the three of us prayed. And I had gone through all sorts of stuff, traditions, written prayers, whatever. And none of it worked. I did it all, but it's like, that didn't take. This took, and it changed my life. And that has energized me, Sharon, because you only see this image, okay? You have no clue to what goes on in my head and in my heart. I do. And God knows.
Yeah, and I love that you're saying that, because isn't that true of all of us? The saying, don't judge a book by its cover. People have looked at me and thought, well, how would you ever know what I've went through? Like, look at you. And I actually, this was years ago, had a therapist tell me, with everything that I had been through, they said, you should have 10 kids from 5 baby daddies, be living in a trailer, and be an addict. Okay, I understand what his point was, but I really was kind of offended, um, just because I thought, why are we labeling people that because they've been through trauma or have been through really hard things, that they should then fall into a certain bucket? And as I've talked with just hundreds of people, there's a lot of people that look like me, look like you, that have been through really hard things. Like you were talking about failure a moment ago, and the countless failures, and the fumbles on the football field, which is such a great analogy, because we see our blooper reel in our head that plays on that loop of all the mistakes, all the blunders, all the pains, the heartbreaks. We don't see our highlight reel on the loop. And unfortunately, and help me just kind of process this out a little bit. I mean, I really think that life is this weird dance of the failures and the highlights, but we tend to focus on the failures and magnify them. Whereas clearly your testimony, your book is focus on the hope, because that's what's going to pull you up and out and keep you moving forward. Is that resonating correctly, Chet?
Boy, it sure does. And may I just share a little tip? Because I have those snippets in my head too, and I struggle with them. And someone once told me, what do you do with them? Well, first of all, I would yell at myself, you stop thinking that. Well, guess what? That doesn't work. Because when you say stop doing that, what are you doing? You're just reinforcing it. So what we need to do is, when we get overwhelmed with those things, or maybe just as the wave starts to come in, is to take it and turn it into worship. Is to say, you know what? I go to the cross. I say, Jesus, when you died, guess what? You knew about this. You knew, and you took the whole weight of it on yourself. And you stayed there the whole time. You didn't let the critics say, oh, come down, Jesus, and say, yeah, I've had enough time out. I'm out of here. No, you stayed the whole time until you could say it was finished. And so I turned that into worship, and to thank God that he never abandoned me. He never walked away from me. And on the cross, when, Jesus says, what? My God, why have you forsaken me? In some strange spiritual sense, God the Father turned away from Jesus when he took our sin on him, and then reconnected after the payment was made. So that's a way to change those things. And if I can I keep talking here, there's a second tip, and this is my favorite tip of all, is I have scars. Okay, I got a lot of scars. I told you about the surgery on my neck. I got a big scar here. I got scars here. I've had 3 knee surgeries. Uh, I've had reconstructive ankle surgery with a bar and 7 screws. You
Mm.
know, we all have scars. Some of them are visible, some of them are not. The question is, what am I going to do with that? Am I going to look
Mhm.
at the scar and say, oh boy, that's ugly? But what does a shepherd or a cattleman do? They brand their animals, which is a scar. And what is that? It's a mark of ownership. It's a
Mm.
mark of ownership. And so I can look at the scar on my hand. I'm looking at it now. And I remember it happened at the ocean. I found a piece of metal that was sharp and I didn't want it to hit the kids. So as I went to throw it away, it came out and put a cut in my hand. Okay, I got that scar. Oh, well, I got to get plastic surgery. I'm not against plastic surgery, but I'm going to look at that as a measurement of say, thank you. This is a mark of ownership, something that you have walked with through me and you never turned away from me.
Mm. That's really good. This has been just such an interesting conversation with you. You're a wealth of information and stories. I can't wait to dive into your book and to have you come back on the show. So as we start wrapping up, what's your last nugget of, we'll call it a Chetism, hopeism. What would you
uh,
like to share with the audience?
I would like to share the fact that I'm just as broken as you, maybe different. Maybe I didn't go through what you did. Yeah, I was abused by a boy in our neighborhood as a kid. I don't know what you went through. I never went down the rabbit hole of drugs, but we're all in the same boat. We're all broken, and all of us can't fix ourselves. We can't even fix each other. As good as community is, hope comes by admitting that I can't do it and realizing that the one who made me is this loving father who's looking out. And this is where grace comes in. Grace is the idea of God reaching out to us, that God is leaning into us, that he is coming towards us. Think about the last time you kissed someone. Just did you sit back and put your arms folded and say, yeah, I'm going to kiss them? No. What do you do when you kiss? You lean in. And that is the image of God leaning into us. And the big lean in happened in Jesus, and he hasn't moved away. He still offers us grace for every day.
Hmm, that's wonderful and beautiful. Chet Gladkowski, hope dealer, storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, it's been my honor and privilege to be with you, Sharon, and for your audience to invite me in. I'm just so humbled by it. I want to thank you and let you know that you are loved beyond all measure, and there is hope for you, and no matter what's going on. Thank you.
Well, friends, thank you for joining me and Chet today. And to learn more about Chet and his book, Hope is the Key, Living Through God's Superpower, you can find all of his contact information listed below in the show notes. And if you're looking for a program where you can get some personal development training, I'm so excited to tell you I am launching the Kingdom Confidence Method. And all the information is linked up for that in the show notes as well. Well, thank you, friends, for being here. And as always, I wish you every good thing.